the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. But not only did they give the land, they built land-grant colleges with government money to teach them how to farm. Not only that, they provided county agents to further their expertise in farming. Not only that, they provided low interest rates in order that they could mechanize their farm. Not only that, today many of these people are receiving millions of dollars in federal subsidies not to farm, and they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. Now, this is what we are faced with, and this is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
What's up, ADOS and our allies? You know who it is, Angela Nirvana, your hostess with the mostest on the Friends of ADOS TV channel, bringing you those ADOS hot topics and making the case for reparations, making the case for Democratic down ballot. And today we got some ADOS hot topics for you, family. Follow in. Good evening on the West Coast. Good evening in the Central. Good evening on the East Coast. Thank you so much, Robin, the Girl Wonder, for joining the live. Trey X, ADOS, thank you for joining the live. Justin Mathis, thank you so much for joining the live. And for those of you who have yet to chat, that you are here with me, I see the numbers, and I thank you so much for joining the live. Yes, family. Oh, Lord, where do I even begin? Do we get a break, family? Can we get a break? Can ADOS ever take a day off from the drama and the trauma in this country? I mean, help me understand. Help me understand why every day feels like war, just trying to be ADOS in this country. It just weighs heavily on me. I'm going to try my best to keep my emotions under check. But it's a lot going on, family, and I just, I'm going to share. I'm going to talk to you about the way I see it, and we're just going to do what we do as family, talk about it, and talk about what we believe are some immediate solutions this election cycle. There are still quite a few ADOS undecided. I understand your dilemma. And I thank you so much, Taj Marie, for joining the live. Yes, share, because Facebook won't let me do my watch parties anymore. They are forever bothering me. I'll be so glad when we get someone with some serious money to put together an ADOS, Facebook space where we can talk openly and freely and truthfully about our issues without being put in jail or any number of things that they like to do to silence us. But anywho, family, there's a lot going on out here. I guess I'm going to actually, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I'll start with Rickia Young in Philadelphia. Okay, let me just play something for you guys. I don't know if you know about this incident in Philadelphia. Mother was in her black SUV, Rickia Young, trying to get through the protest, and was pulled to the side by about 20 race soldiers that dragged her out of the car. And she got separated from her toddler, whom the race soldiers chose to do a photo op with. As they're beating the mother to a pulp, they are pretending in a photo op with her toddler that they are good and kind. The massa is good and kind to Wee's ADOS. Look at the way they gingerly care for the toddler child while the mother is beat to a pulp. I mean, bust through her SUV windows and the whole 9 yards. Let me just find it for you, family. Good Lord. Wow. Whoa. Whoa. Oh, damn. They bust up all the windows in that joint. Was there kids in there? Somebody just hopped out with a baby. Come on. They just bust up all the windows. Oh my gosh. I'm shook. Let's get into it, family. Thank you, James Howard Manchester, for joining the live. I thank you all. Let me just get into it. Mom beaten by Philly cops, separated from her child during Walter Wallace Jr. unrest. Now, this is a brother whose family called for an ambulance, and the race soldiers saw fit to annihilate him in the streets. I think they just, excuse me, hold on 1 second, family. All kind of things are trying to talk, and I don't want that part. Hold on 1 second. Yeah. So Walter Wallace, I don't know if you guys recall, he was having a psychotic episode, and the mother called for help, and the race soldiers came, I think, the third time. For the third time that day, and on the third occasion, I think they riddled him with about 12 shots when the mother was calling for an ambulance. And so they executed him. So there's been a lot of unrest, a lot of protest, a lot of burning and looting and all kinds of things that generally happen out of our outrage, our being enraged with the oppressor's boot constantly on our necks. And what you have to understand, family, is that I get a lot of Black boomer Gen Xer privileged that like to come for me because I am a unicorn like them, but I speak up about these issues and I don't toe the party line. So I'm sure many of you undergo this with your friends and family as well, where they're trying to shame you because you won't fall in line and go and vote blue no matter who to your people's own peril. We are at George Floyd, 8 minutes and 46 seconds to the neck for the world to see. And yet we are the ones being shamed for not running to the polls to vote for Biden and Kamala in order to unseat Trump. It just blows my mind that we are in 2020 and can be at George Floyd 8 minutes 46 seconds to the neck for the world to see as he cries for his mother and urinates himself. And yet the elitists amongst us, and mind you, they barely have $1.25 their damn selves. But they've got the nerve to want to toe the party line over doing something more revolutionary with their vote. And I'm the one that they're coming for because I'm encouraging us to go out here and weaponize our vote and socialize our suffering. So I see many of you coming to my defense, liking my comments in my Facebook space. I thank you always for your support, for your love, and for the revolution in you and the comrade in you, because to me, we've been doing the lesser of two evil two-step shuffle to George Floyd 846 since FDR 1936. And look at where we are. This is the fruit of that. But sadly, too many of the unicorns of my ilk, educated professionals, believe that we need to continue the lesser two evil two-step shuffle to our own peril. They claim it's not happening to me. It's not all of us, as if it happening to some of us is acceptable. That is what incenses me beyond. And this is why I stay on my square and continue to do this show. So anywho, back to Walter. He was gunned down because he had a psychotic episode. Of course, they're going to say he was wielding a gun when we all know that many white folks come at the officers. You know, they charge these officers and they spit on these officers and bite these officers and kick and do all manner of things, and they get to walk away unscathed. So I don't even know what to believe about this knife, because they make up so much stuff to give themselves cover. But this beats all. This story right here beats all, because a woman, I didn't even see her out there protesting. I saw her in her black SUV trying to drive through, I guess, where the protests were happening. And I'm telling you, you got to go to the YouTube to see it. But about 20 race soldiers converged on her car, bust through her windows, snatched her out the car, and used it as a photo op with her baby. A white woman, of course, was holding her toddler child as the race soldiers had their way, beating her to a pulp. But we're supposed to run to the polls to vote for Biden and Kamala, who have no reform in place, inclusive of dismantling private prisons and doing away with qualified immunity. So they just continue to get away with beating us and oppressing us. And furthermore, we still have family in these neighborhoods, many of us. So we might live amongst the privileged, but these bullets, these batons, these tasers, their knees, their hands, no pedigree. So this could easily be one of us, and yet I'm the one that's shamed for pushing a Democratic down ballot strategy and anyone but Biden Harris at the top. I'm not suggesting anything unakin to Dr. Charles Morris, pastor of Abyssinian Church in the early 20s. You see, after Black folks elected Teddy Roosevelt, he dishonorably discharged 167 Buffalo soldiers for being accused of killing a second white man while quarantined in their barracks from being accused of having murdered the first white man. Okay? They were probably murdering these men themselves to try to make a case against our Buffalo soldiers. So he dishonorably discharged them after he got the Black vote. And Dr. Charles Morris, pastor of Abyssinian Church, suggested the very thing I am suggesting, as is the ADOS movement is suggesting, to make way for, at the time, we were voting Republican. So he was for a Republican Congress and delivering the top of the ticket to the Democrats. Now it's in the reverse since FDR 36. We've been voting predominantly blue, no matter damn who. And so what we're suggesting is not new. Okay, this was a strategy they were trying to invoke in the early 20s to get dignity and civil rights and economic inclusion for the ADOS. He didn't call it ADOS. That didn't come until Martin Luther King, and where do we go from here? That's why I first saw Martin Luther King refer to us as American descendants of slavery. So what we're suggesting with the Democratic down ballot and leave the top open to the Republican and deliver a Democratic Congress to protect the over 42% of ADOS who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism is not unakin to what he recommended when Teddy Roosevelt gave the Blacks in the South his middle finger after he secured the vote. And so for those of you who think, let's get Biden and Kamala in office and then they'll do something for us, how'd that work out with Obama? Y'all still waiting for Obama to do something or say something favorable to help the ADOS. But the ADOS movement is shamed for suggesting an immediate solution that, oh, by the way, if these Democrats get the trifecta, they're opening up these borders to 11 million more immigrants and giving them a pathway to citizenship before paying us our reparations and giving us our Black agenda. So what they're hopeful to do is to flood the country with immigration so that we'll have immigrants leading this country in due season, who we already know does the job of the oppressor. We are already 13% in this country. I do believe that includes Black immigrants. To Hispanics, 19%. And they want to open the floodgates to 11 million more. So I'm here to tell you, family, this is the last election cycle this particular protest vote may have any levity. But let me get into this article so I can share with you about what happened to Miss Young in front of her children. A Philadelphia officer was pulled from street duties this week and is under an internal affairs investigation after attorneys say a woman was thrown from her car, beaten, detained, and separated from her child while trying to drive home during protests and unrest Tuesday. Attorneys for Rickia Young say Philly cops broke her car windows with batons, struck her several times, and pulled her 2-year-old son and 16-year-old nephew from a vehicle she was driving near protesters and police this week. Before 2 a.m. Tuesday, Young, a 28-year-old home health care worker, left her home near Temple University in her sister's SUV to go pick up her nephew, who was with friends in West Philadelphia and needed a ride home. When Young was trying to get home early Tuesday, the National Guard had not yet arrived in Philadelphia to protect businesses during looting and unrest. It was mere hours after Wallace was killed Monday afternoon, and police were all over, monitoring protests and responding to looting, including along 52nd Street. That's where Young, who tried to take her usual route home from West Philly, was at the wheel when she encountered a standoff between the officers at 52nd Street and the different protesters and whoever else was out there in confrontation with the police, attorney Kevin Mincy said. Mincy said police on 52nd Street ordered Young to turn back. She began backing up to make a K-turn. I don't know what that is. The officers then swarmed her car, Mincy said, using their batons to break the windows before opening the door and pulling Young from the vehicle. They struck Young and the teenage nephew before detaining her and holding the 2-year-old. Young has swelling on her face and body, a swollen trachea, and was bleeding. Mincy said officers told Young her son was going to be taken to a better place. Young was placed in the back of a police vehicle with a juvenile who had a cell phone. Young used that person's phone to call her mother, who is the 2-year-old's grandmother, attorneys said. The grandmother went to 52nd Street and asked for her daughter and grandson, but he wasn't there. The grandmother eventually found the boy about 4 miles away near City Hall in the back of a police vehicle with officers in the front seat. The 2-year-old was in his car seat without his hearing aids and with broken shards of glass in the car seat. Young spent the night between police headquarters and Jefferson University Hospital, where she received treatment under officer supervision. Later, she was released with no charges filed. Young's purse, wallet, and her son's hearing aids were in the vehicle, which has not been located. That car, we assume, has been destroyed. We do not know where the car is. Police have not attempted to inform us where the car may be recovered, Mincy said. Philadelphia Police Commissioner Daniel Outlaw told reporters Friday that an officer who struck the vehicle was placed on restricted duty during the internal affairs investigation. That began after a reporter asked her about a viral video filmed from a rooftop that captured officers hitting Young. The Philadelphia Inquirer spoke to witnesses, including a resident who filmed the video. Quote, with this case and any other allegations that have since arisen, you know, we take all of this seriously, Outlaw said Friday. My expectation is that these investigations are done in a fair and timely manner. And so social media perceptions. Attorney Riley Ross was critical of the National Fraternal Order of Police, which made a viral Facebook post that later spread to other police social media pages. The post has since been removed, showed a female officer holding Young's son, who was characterized as a child officers found abandoned and barefoot during complete lawlessness on the street. Ross said that post mischaracterized the incident. They're implying that a community of people were out and about running past a 2-year-old child that was out at 1:30 in the morning, barefoot, and didn't care about them. And the police were the only ones who cared, Ross said, when in fact, the police were the only ones who put this child in danger. They traumatized his mother, me speaking, in front of him, smashed in the car windows, pulled her out, and assaulted her. They traumatized the child's nephew, smashed in the windows, pulled him out, assaulted him, and they traumatized this child by keeping this child away from his mother, me speaking, and using it as a photo op to show how kind and genteel the white missus is to the young boy who everyone just left abandoned, roaming in the streets with shards of glass everywhere. He's just 1:30 in the morning out there. No one knows who he belongs to. Isn't she the best missus ever? Look at the race soldier holding the son, the abandoned toddler. This reminds me of that young black boy whom was holding on to the police, crying out for help against his lesbian parents, and they took a photo op of that to try to present the police as kind and loving to this young boy who was crying for his life. No one would believe him until the lesbians drove him and the rest of their these children were foster children, drove them right off the cliff. But they used that opportunity to show this young boys being so beholding and revering the race soldier as tears were streaming from his face. He needed help. He lost his life. I think he was 11 or 12. These kids had been starved, weren't going to school, were truant, lesbian white women drove him and his foster siblings off a cliff. But this is what these race soldiers do as they beat us to a pulp, as they execute us by government sanction. This is what's happening in the neighborhood. That woman could have been any of us. She was a working professional woman going to get her nephew who did not have a ride. And this is what happened to her. While my very privileged unicorn, black ADOS want to come for me for wanting to be revolutionary with my vote, for wanting to stick it to the Democrats who don't have any real reform on the table. No real reform on the table. But you can see Kamala on the news laughing like a hyena as she backpedals on anything that's helpful to the progressives and says, I'm getting in line with Biden and whatever he prescribes. National FOP spokesperson Jessica Cahill told NBC 10 the National FOP subsequently learned of conflicting accounts of the circumstances under which the child came to be assisted by the officer and immediately took the photo and caption down. Social media rumors also cast Young and her nephew as looters or participants in the unrest that night. Attorneys said that wasn't true. There was no looting on the part of Miss Young or anyone that was in her vehicle. Not the 16-year-old and certainly not the 2-year-old, Attorney Thomas Fitzpatrick said. Young, who is recovering from her injuries and had to bury a family member, was not at a press conference, her attorneys held Friday. The lawyers have asked for a public apology from the city and police force and anticipate compensation in some form. You see, family, me speaking, we get to pay for our abuse by the race soldiers going and coming. Our tax-paying dollars pay their salaries, and our tax-paying dollars pay the millions of dollars in civil suits. ADOS gets to pay both ways. But the unicorns amongst the ADOS lineage want us to continue in this thread of lesser of two evil, two-step shuffle to our own peril. That could have been any of us going to pick up our nephew. And this kind of nonsense didn't know her pedigree. They saw her in her SUV and decide to smash her windows and beat her and the nephew, take her son away, and then pretend as if they just rescued a 2-year-old toddler off the streets, abandoned. They said they were prepared to take it to court if necessary. We fully expect that there will be some kind of compensation paid to this family. However, what's important to us all to understand is that as citizens of Philadelphia and citizens of a community, we cannot stand idly by and watch people be victimized and beaten by the police, Fitzpatrick said. We have to stand up and we have to say enough is enough. Who the hell do they think they are? We are not going to let this continue. And that is what the ADOS movement is saying with our protest vote. Who the hell do you think you are, Democrats, to decide to do something for all the other groups while ignoring us, the very anchor that tethers this country? We are in the fight of our lives to prevent from becoming the permanent underclass. And we are being squeezed on all sides by the race soldiers in COVID, miseducation, redlining, lack of jobs, lack of a livable wage, lack of affordable housing, lack of home ownership, lack of business ownership, while they weaponize immigration against us and cater to the Republicans. It will not surprise me if they don't soon start running a Republican, a straight up Republican in the Democratic Party, if we don't do something very revolutionary with our vote. Because what we send a strong message to the Democratic Party whenever we continue to vote 90% of the ones that show to the polls is that they never have to do a damn thing for us. That's what continuing to vote blue, no matter who, is teaching them. As we continue to be executed by the race soldiers and suffering from lack of health care and dying from COVID and COVID-related cases that wreak havoc on our bodies. So no, it's not happening to me directly. To those of you who say it's not all of us. But if white folks share 100 trillion household dollars to ADOS less than 700 billion since COVID, who do you think this is happening to by and large? We have become the unicorns. I'm working in this space until people like me and the ones who shame me or try to shame me, because you know there ain't no shame in my game. I'm on my square since last election cycle. To me, none of us are free if we're at George Floyd 846 in 2020 and the beat goes on. They have not let up from executing us and beating us to a pulp and jailing us. So this is my new normal, and I highly encourage you guys to join me in that. I really do. Next up, folks are mad at the brothers for not towing the Biden Kamala line. They're taking a lot of flack, taking a lot of heat for not towing the line, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. So they want to make it our fault. I'm a Black progressive, and I'm not voting until there is a real greater good. Converting voting skeptics isn't about guilt tripping us. It's about not shying away from actual reforms. The fact that former Vice President Joe Biden appears to be the presumptuous Democratic candidate in the 2020 presidential election doesn't mean the discussion has ended. Just yesterday, now this article is from Level. They have 22,000 followers. I'm trying to find, okay, there's the date. This was back in May, but this is relevant. Just yesterday, after a month of infighting between old guard progressives and their millennial counterparts, the New York Times ran an op-ed column excoriating these young shitsters for not falling in line to support Amtrak Joe. Quote, taking a principled stand is courageous only when those taking it put themselves at risk, wrote Mitchell Abador, the author of numerous books about leftist movements. Placing others at risk requires no courage at all. Here we go again, arguing about whether to hold our nose and vote for a candidate who represents little more than more of the same. Let me just cut to the chase because I got to get to our read. The bottom line is the Democrats have put us between a rock and a hard place. They have leveraged this moment of Trump and the world's disdain for Trump, save his supporters. They are weaponizing this moment against us by forcing Biden on us and him forcing Kamala on us. Neither of them were slated to win the primaries. Neither of them were on track to do that. Bernie Sanders won 3 states straight, and Clyburn, you know there's always a bootlick amongst us that's going to do the Democratic bidding. Shame the people in the South. I don't even know that he had to do much because the boomers just fall in line. Why? They've got their creature comforts. The only boomers I know, well, not every boomer, but many of the boomers that are on the side of the ADOS movement are either very, very liberal in their politics or they're struggling in the same vein as the Gen Xers and the millennials. Yeah, so they're in this fight. But the ones who aren't, they benefited from affirmative action. They got gainful employment, making far more than $15 an hour. They have their homes. They own their homes. They're probably done reverse mortgages on their homes, which means they're not leaving anything to their children. They got their education. Out here in California, we're fighting for Prop 16 to pass because after affirmative action was taken from us in 96, I heard a young woman on one of the shows say that enrollment at UC Berkeley, where there's 400,000 students, went to, I want to say, 1% for the ADOS. Something ridiculous after they took away affirmative action down here in 96. So down here, it's very difficult for ADOS to get gainful employment. We're 44% of the degreed and only 6% of the private sector. It's difficult for them to get into colleges under affirmative action, get, all type of a scholarship to go to college. So the squeeze has been on us since 96. And so we're working to undo that. This election cycle, Prop 16. So I'm saying all this to say that it's no wonder that Black men aren't in support of Biden and Kamala. It's no wonder. The miseducation, the lack of education, the lack of jobs, because immigrants down here, due in large part, are 51% Hispanic to ADOS 6%. Although we're more educated than they are, we have a challenge getting into the private sector because there's no one in there. There's no social capital. They don't have to be held to affirmative action since it was revoked. And so Black men are having a challenge with the incarceration rates, with the government-sanctioned executions, with the fact that they can't find employment. They are the most unemployed in this country. And if they have employment, they're underemployed. That makes it difficult to get married and have families. All of it's relative. It all is a domino effect. No health care. They can barely afford, they can't even get home ownership, business ownership, they're not lending. So they want to shame the Black men for not voting for Biden and Kamala. When you've got the author of the 94 crime bill, segregationist Jim Crow Joe, and Callie's top cop, by her own admission, Kamala the Chameleon, both of whom Biden says nothing will fundamentally change, and Kamala said she's not doing anything specifically for the ADOS. And so they're mad with Black men who are choosing to either vote Trump or Libertarian or Green Party or ADOS in the space. I don't blame Black men. They are the most trampled on in this country. And that trickles down to Black boys. And so this is all by design of institutional systemic racism. But folks want to shame them for not continuing to vote the blue no matter who, no matter what. And I say, lean in, brothers. Don't give that vote until they give you reparations and a Black agenda in exchange for your vote. We need to protest henceforth until that happens. Now, with that strategy, we'll have a couple of years to vet ADOS for ADOS to get them in those seats in Congress. But it's going to take money, family. You got to put your money where your mouth is. It's not going to happen by osmosis. We have the Equity Advocates PAC you can give there. Right now, Tamara Johnson-Shealy is in the final stretches. And I'm praying that it's a favorable outcome for her. But I know her struggle has been mighty because of lack of money. So we've got 2 years to build our co-fers, to vet our candidates, to get them elected at every level of government. That's the only way to win reparations, is to get full-chested ADOS in that Congress who are about reparations, not just a study into perpetuity at the expense of the taxpayers. Oh, let me come over here. I've been over here. What's up, family? I see y'all. Thank you so much, Astrid, for joining the live. Mojo On, thank you for joining the live. Jack Downs, thank you so much for joining the live. Kunta, thank you for joining the live. Vicki Lewis, I see you, my love. Thank you for joining the live. Okay, family, so I'm going to get to your comments after I do the reading. We got to get into this. Where are we at in time? Oh, not bad. I did that in 40 minutes. Okay, I might be able to get you guys out of here in a timely manner. I am hot. Oh, Lord have mercy. Okay, family. Tonight, now mind you, you guys know it's story time. I read to you. We're almost done with this book, actually. I read to you so you can understand and overstand why it's imperative that you show up in Obama-style numbers to vote this election cycle, and I'm prayerful that this will give you a firm resolve. Oh, that's too much light. I'm prayerful this will give you a firm resolve to actually join us in the protest. And anybody but the Democrats at the top of the ticket and a Democratic down ballot. That's my real hope, that you guys will join us in that until they give us the reparations in the trillions over multi-generations, a debt that is owed for slavery, Jim Crow, and accrued ongoing systemic racism, oppression, and disadvantage in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Richard Nixon, 1969 to 1974. Nixon's victory in 1968 was a reaction against the liberation movement of the 60s. A return to law and order. We've heard those words, family. I'll be commenting in between like normal. This is from the book Prejudential: Black America and the Presidents by Margaret Kimberly. Yeah, you saw Biden and Trump get into a pissing match over who's going to be more law and order in our communities. Our communities. They're not talking education, American salaries, jobs, business ownership, home ownership, healthcare. No. They got into a pissing match over who's going to be more of a law and order president over us, as if we don't have enough of the oppressive boot on our neck. Return to law and order was his campaign theme, a not subtle attack on the activism of the previous decade, and in particular, a dog whistle to white racists rattled by the anger that erupted into violence following the murder of Martin Luther King. Oh, back to Joe, who said, when asked about the Philly protest, stop looting. When asked about police reform after George Floyd, shoot them in the leg over shooting them in the heart. How about not shooting us at all? Like it's not like you don't have sensitivity training, because when it's your white folks, you somehow know how to be sensitive. So you're just clearly out here annihilating ADOS. And why do I say ADOS due in large part? It's because down here, African immigrants are 60,000 liquid to the ADOS 200 liquid. So the race soldiers are not where the African immigrants reside. They're in the hood where the poor folks reside. And I want you to know, I'm speaking about Color of Wealth LA from 2004 to 2013 or 14. Who knows about our liquidity now that COVID has hit us? Because if COVID doesn't take you out, the economic disparity amongst the ADOS from having lost their jobs and their homes, it's going to be a crater, like a hole in the earth when this is all said and done, given what's happening now. And that's why we're ringing the alarm. But Biden doesn't, he doesn't refer to the looting of the government during this pandemic. He's not referring to that. $5 trillion for the top 1%. That's their bailout, bailing out the stock market, propping it up. While they give us, $1,200 checks. And that was done, before you even received it, if you received it. If you had an address or a bank account that it could be funded. No more federal stimulus for unemployment. It is a hot mess, and the economic destruction that's coming for the ADOS is going to wipe us totally out. So I don't even know what our liquidity is anymore. I would venture to say it's negative, in the red. Not for the unicorns who want to brag about how good they have it, and it's not all of us. There before his grace, guys. We all need to be empathetic. Because I don't know anybody that's not a couple paychecks from being right out here with them. Okay? As they sit up here and act as if you're just supposed to go and vote blue without demanding that the oppressor gets his boot off our necks. Back to the text. Nixon won a three-way race against Democratic Vice President Hubert Humphrey and Alabama Governor George Wallace, a segregationist Democrat who ran as an independent. This is what we're hoping will happen this election cycle: a Republican top and a Democratic down ballot. The combination of total votes for Nixon and Wallace proved that white America wanted to be finished with black people and their demands for citizenship rights. We still fighting for that. It's 2020 and we're still fighting for citizenship rights. We're still fighting to be American in the country our ancestors built with their lives. Nixon did not disappoint and began the process of openly using racism to gain political support. Ironically, he also enacted policies that were helpful to many black people. There was a great gloom in Black America in '68. Lyndon Johnson was still seen as a savior after his legendary arm twisting brought the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Act into being. But the Vietnam War upended his tenure. And when Senator Eugene McCarthy proved to be a viable opponent for the Democratic nomination, Johnson withdrew his re-election bid. That political tumult was followed by the assassination of Martin Luther King on April 4, 1968, and of Robert Kennedy on June 5, 1968. Nixon made overt appeals to white racism with his campaign to bring back law and order. He actively opposed school busing as a tool of integration and made clear his intent to turn back the clock to the days when white people were not forced to be discomfited by black people's demands. Sounds like Biden. His administration began with orders to slow down school desegregation plans, a first since the Brown decision in '54. Sounds like Biden, who says, don't shoot him in the heart, just shoot him in the leg. He nominated 2 Southern segregationists as Supreme Court justices, although both were rejected by the Senate. To black people, it looked like the end of the changes they had worked for so relentlessly. The presidential election results showed a clear reaction against them and their demands for citizenship rights. Nixon's election seemed like the end of their political world, augmented by his having advisors like the controversial Daniel Moynihan, who urged benign neglect of the troublesome black masses. Is a benign neglect still the order of the day? Correct me if I'm wrong. It was Nixon who established the Office of Minority Business Enterprise, which helped black businesses acquire government contracts. The terms quota and set-asides are now radioactive to politicians. No, it isn't. Not when it comes to immigrants. That's how they're able to fare financially and economically far better than the ADOS. They've got affirmative action protecting them. They've got set-asides. They've got employment. They've got government contracts, all at the expense of the ADOS. Because they use immigration. They weaponize immigration, calling them minority, people of color, lumping us all into this one-size-fits-all category, while being in a position to tell us no. Because the immigrants, they're lumping us all together and making us one. So they can get the affirmative action. They can get the set-asides. That was intended to make us whole. That's why we want cash repair in the trillions over multi-generations. We don't want anything you can give with the left and take with the right. We'll pay for our own education. Run us those trillions. We'll pay for our own homes. We'll open up our own businesses. We won't need government. And that's what they don't want. Because capitalism needs a bottom caste and they chose us. And the ADOS movement is fighting for our very survival in this country when we demand reparations and a Black agenda. And this is no different than our ancestors who demanded our emancipation of Lincoln. They stole away from slavery, stormed the Union camps, 500 strong or more, and persisted until he emancipated us. There was a persistence for civil rights. There will have to be a persistence for reparations. This won't happen if we just decide, oh, they won't do it. Imagine if the ancestors chose not to fight for emancipation because a lot of skeptics said we will never be free. Imagine where we would be in terms of segregation, which probably was the best thing for us, but not in the heinous, horrific, mob lynching, convict leasing way that it was being invoked on us. Had Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement not persisted in getting Lyndon B. Johnson to sign for our civil rights. It's wash, rinse, repeat. We're going to have to persist in the reparations, and we have to do something very revolutionary until we have the money to be at the table. The only thing we've got, the only commodity we've got is our vote. And to weaponize it until these Democrats are on reparations while they're campaigning for our vote. The terms quota and set-asides are now radioactive to politicians, but it is Nixon who brought them into reality with the OMBE, the Office of Minority Business Enterprise. And this, me speaking, this is why it's good that Ice Cube accepted a call from the Trump administration. Nixon was a Republican. He at least got the quota and set-asides that are done away with now, which is why we're on the bottom in the fight of our lives to prevent extinction. At least third world, living in shanties in the country of our ancestors, who were here long before America was even formed. And so it's foolish to think that he is supposed to just take a call for the Democrats and not the Republicans. We're about who's going to get it done. And Nixon got it done in part. He did some other heinous, horrific things to us, of which I'll get to, but this was a positive. And as we see, without it, we're doomed. Nixon left a contradictory legacy. In 1973, he outlined a health care plan that looked much like Barack Obama's later Affordable Care Act, which perhaps ought to have been given the moniker Nixon Care instead of Obamacare. As 21st century Republicans made repeal of the ACA a centerpiece of their initiatives, it should be remembered that only 40 years earlier, conservative think tanks like the Heritage Foundation recommended a similar health care plan. They are so damn petty, that Trump. This is Nixon's plan, and he's doing everything he can to discredit Obama and put Trump care on it. He's so damn petty. But one of Nixon's worst and most enduring legacies was the return to normalized racism. Vice President Spiro Agnew was his attack dog and became known as Nixon's Nixon. Agnew bragged, quote, "Dividing the American people has been my main contribution to the national political scene. I not only pled guilty to this charge, but I am somewhat flattered by it," close quote. Strategist Kevin Phillips honed the message of Democratic Party identification with Black people and made clear what success would look like. White Democrats will desert their party in droves. Nixon's attacks on the civil rights movement were not just rhetorical. During his tenure, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover instituted the counterintelligence program COINTELPRO, the purpose of which was to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of Black nationalists, hate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters. Who's that sound like, family? The ADOS movement. They're already putting in work, been doing it since, we upended Kamala's race. Because we're busy. The revolution is being social mediaized. We've been called Russian bots, Trump supporters, you name it. They've dragged us. Same tactics. The more things stay the same, the more things stay the same. The number of ghetto-type informants more than doubled, from 3,300 under Johnson to 7,500 under Nixon. The Nixon administration considered a campaign against Coretta Scott King and sought to undermine Ralph Abernathy's influence as successor at the SCLC. In the meantime, the two major political parties had switched their basis of support. The civil rights movement had completely changed the political allegiance of Black voters. White Southerners began trending away from the Democrats, and the South became the heart of the Republican Party. Code words and dog whistles changed the face of politics in the United States. Republican strategist Lee Atwater said, "By 1968, you can't say nigger. So you say things like forced busing, states' rights." In other words, like I've said on previous shows, they no longer have to call us nigger. They build it into the policies and into the legislation. This strategy of thinly veiled racial divisiveness found great success. Except for Jimmy Carter's one term from 77 to 81, Republicans won every presidential contest from 68 until 1992. The Democrats also took notice and became more conservative and more anti-Black in response to Republican success. Isn't that Biden's 47 years in office? Proudly from the Senate hearing floor, boasting about he doesn't care how we became oppressed, lock them up, they're predators. You can look it up on YouTube. That came from him first. Then Hillary Clinton. I'm not doing anything specifically for you. I'm giving the police, the race soldiers, $30 million more. I'm going to get into a pissing contest with Trump over more law and order in your communities. Not education, not home ownership, not business ownership, not jobs paying an American wage. More race soldiers. Having Republicans speak at the DNC. Yeah. So that's what's happening to the Democratic Party. It's the same bird. I'm telling you, it won't be long before they're running a Republican on the Democratic ticket. They already have. Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. Joe Biden is Strom Thurmond's boy. Segregationist Jim Crow Joe, whom Kamala now says in her 60 Minutes interview that she's going to do the bidding of Joe Biden. To hell with the lobbyists who paid a gang of money for her to back a Green New Deal, for her to back Medicare for all. She's pivoted from those positions. But if anyone could have predicted that a future Democratic president, the first Black president, would claim a right to kill without charge or trial, or that another Democrat would create a mass incarceration state for Black people, Nixon might not have fared so badly in comparison. Wasn't he the creator of the war on drugs? Gerald Ford. And then I'll pray us out. This is short. 1974 to 1977. Gerald Ford was an accidental president. He became Nixon's vice president in 1973 when Vice President Spiro Agnew resigned after a felony conviction. Nixon himself resigned in August 74 as he was on the verge of being impeached for his role in the Watergate scandal. Ford was the only president in American history who was not elected to the position of president or vice president. Ford came to office after many civil rights battles had been fought. The Voting Rights and Civil Rights Acts had become law. He presided over a new chapter in history as de jure school desegregation and affirmative action became the battlegrounds of America's never-ending fight against its racist founding. Ford had been a Northern Republican congressman during the time when segregation was the bastion of white Southern Democrats. Like other Republicans, he voted in favor of the landmark civil rights legislation, but he became president after Nixon had successfully reversed the political polarity and made the Republicans the white party. Forced busing was a term used to appeal to white America in the 70s. Like states' rights quotas and the war on drugs, it was a means of communicating opposition to Black civil and citizenship rights. The April 20th, 1971 unanimous Supreme Court ruling in Swan v. Charlotte, Mecklenburg County paved the way for busing children into otherwise segregated public schools to achieve the desegregation ordered by the 1954 Brown decision. The Swan case ignited a firestorm of protests, violence, and ultimately the wholesale departure of white families from public school systems around the country. Barely 2 weeks into his administration, Ford made clear that he was sticking with Republican Party strategy on this issue. Quote, "I'm opposed to the forced busing of school children because it does not lead to better education, and it infringes upon traditional freedoms in America." Thanks to Nixon's Southern strategy, white America now had a friend in the Republican Party. Opposition to school desegregation plans was a means of achieving solid support for the Republicans as a new party of and for white America. On May 27, 1976, Ford said his Justice Department would look to review the Brown decision, which had long been accepted as the law of the land. His press secretary backpedaled the very next day, saying that the president had made a, quote, incorrect reference, close quote, to the Brown case, and it meant to point out subsequent decisions related specifically to busing. The words may have been an inelegant gaffe, but they were uttered because Ford knew that not so subtle racism won the day politically. Boston, Massachusetts became the epicenter of the busing fight when a federal judge ordered a school busing plan in October 1974. Like Eisenhower, Ford straddled the fence, saying that he disagreed with the court order, but expected Boston to, quote, respect the law. The reaction from white neighborhoods in Boston was violent. Black people were attacked in the streets, and even pro-busing Senator Edward Kennedy had to flee from a mob attempting to overturn his car. Both the mayor of Boston and the governor of Massachusetts requested National Guard troops, but Ford refused to provide them. Ultimately, the administration did not challenge the Boston court order, but Ford continued his appeals to white American racism. On June 5th, 1976, Ford made clear his belief that segregation of private schools was acceptable when he was asked if he would approve of a private school turning someone away on the basis of color. His reply was a classic tactic from the racist playbook, quote, individuals have rights. I would hope they would not, but individuals have a right where they are willing to make the choice themselves and there are no taxpayer funds involved, close quote. Ford had contradicted his own Justice Department and his interpretation that private schools could discriminate against Black children would be overruled by a Supreme Court decision just a few weeks later. Gerald Ford was a classic American president. He played to the racial demands of white people and hoped not to be called on his chicanery. But fate called him out. His status as an unelected president, his pardon of Nixon, and an economic downturn all undid him. He was succeeded by a Southern Democrat who managed to get Black votes while also evoking the same racist tropes as his Republican predecessors. Now, I don't know if I'll get to us on Tuesday. I've been asked by Spectrum News One, a national cable news station akin to CNN, to come on Tuesday to talk about election night results and the outcome. So as soon as I get more information, I will be sharing it with you guys. Some of you actually have cable and have Spectrum News One. I was on there after the first debates. Not sure if you can find the link anywhere, but I was there representing Adolph Strong, and as an undecided. I was decided, but I came on as an undecided onto that show. But Tuesday, they want me back as a guest to talk about the election results, and I'm very, very happy to oblige. You know me, anytime I get to take our message of reparations and a Black agenda to a national platform, I'm all in for that. Let me see what you guys have got to share before I let you go, pray you out. We're at 1:07, doing pretty good on time. I'm just going to share the pertinent comments. I love you guys, Black and Strong. Thank you for joining the live. Yes, Taj Marie says it's getting crazy close to election time. It really is. They're bringing in the National Guards, national troops. They boarded up Beverly Hills out here. They're expecting, I guess, an all-out war, civil war to unfold if Biden is elected. They're bracing the country for that. Right now, he's ahead in the polls, if you believe the polls. But the polls had Hillary ahead. I don't take any stock in these polls. I still highly suggest you get to the polls in Obama-style numbers and join us in the protest vote. Nothing changes until we change the way we do politics. Question, that MLK soundbite you just played, would you happen to have a link to that entire speech lecture or know exactly what speech lecture that was extracted from? Justin, you can actually find that in YouTube. That's just a little minute that I like to play at the opening, but they do have the entire speech in YouTube. Look up MLK Jr. on reparations to find that. I saw that video. That photo op with that cop holding the child was deplorable. It was so deplorable, Taj Marie, especially since they tried to fashion it in like the child had been abandoned. They knew full well what happened, that the race soldiers had beat his mother to a pulp right in front of him. And they just exploited the young boy, exploited the mother and her teen nephew involved. They beat the nephew. It's just unbelievable what these race soldiers, the lengths they'll go through, the lengths they'll go through in order to try to make themselves out to be none other than the race soldiers they are at our expense. How dare you beat the mother to a pulp and then choose to take a photo with the child as if he had been abandoned in the streets at 2 a.m. and you were doing something, redemptive. These race soldiers don't, these crooked cops with 3Ks, they don't stop. What's up, Nicole Williams Chrisman? Thank you so much for joining the live. Taj Marie says, I read the article in tweets. They didn't even clear the broken window glass from the child's car seat that they removed and had placed in the police car. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. The child was sitting in the shards of glass. Astra said, that's that part on the head. That's that pat on the head they've been seeking. They've got it now, but don't realize it's a noose around their necks. Sis Star, you have never lied. Astra goes on to say she realized that she couldn't get through. She tried to turn around. Her baby had hearing aids, and somehow they can't find them. There was a teen in the car also. Yes, I read the article. The hearing aids are in the car that has miraculously disappeared. They're somewhere trying to clean up the story, trying to get it together. But thankfully, somebody was filming off the top of the roof. Because I'm sure even if the cameras were on, they're not turning over that evidence. What you worry about immigration. Mojo On says, what you worry about immigration? Well, immigration is being weaponized against the ADOS in particular and poor whites too. My fight is for ADOS. When the immigrants come over to this country, they do nothing to fight for our reparations and Black agenda, but they sit down and they get the entire farm offered to them by both parties who are sparring for their vote right now. Both parties wants the immigrant vote. And so they're offering all their goodies. And the problem with the trifecta of the Democratic Party is that everyone will take their goodies and go home and be at peace and be restored back to gainful employment in the whole 9 yards. We will be the only ones left to suffer. What I'm asking is for us to weaponize our vote and socialize our suffering until they cut the check in the trillions over multi-generations. Our vote is all we've got to weaponize. And by next election cycle, if the Democrats win and they open these floodgates to 11 million more illegals, our vote won't even matter. They're already trying to give this vote away to illegals. They want illegals to be able to vote. Not our ex-felons, but give the illegals the right to vote. That's what they want to do with the vote right now. It's a hot mess. So immigration hurts ADOS because they get to fill in the blanks and get all the affirmative action and set-asides that are owed to the ADOS, whose ancestors built all the wealth the immigrants and the white folks eat from in this country. That's why I worry over immigrants. And that's why I agree with Trump. Although Trump is moving left on immigration. Why is that, family? Why is the very conservative Supreme Court upholding DACA? Because immigration is good for capitalism. It suppresses the wages. So I voted Green Party at the top of the ticket, and the most progressive Democratic down ballot I could find to protect the over 42% of ADOS who rely on government assistance by design of institutional systemic racism. And the goal of the ADOS movement is to do akin to what we're doing down here in California for affirmative action and for our reparations study. We are intending to vet and replace the lames with full-chested ADOS for reparations in that Congress by 2022 and by 2024. So we don't get a break. No matter who wins, ADOS movement still has a ton of work on its plate. I had to move the show to 7 because I had a 6 o'clock work group meeting over vetting candidates to present for the commission to study our repair down here. We're trying to make sure we're at the table, because if we're not, the same thing that happened to the ADOS in Evanston, Illinois, could potentially happen to us. where you have a reparations that's serving everybody but ADOS. Evanston is full of mostly Black immigrants who are going to receive our reparations because of the way that bill was written up. So we're trying to control the outcome of that study. We're putting a gate up around ADOS as an ethnicity down here. We want to be singled out. We want to unflatten Blackness so that we can be seen. Because we're 90% in this country sharing less than 700 billion since COVID, while the top 10% of us share 2.3 trillion. Now there's some overlapping, but by and large, the Black immigrants are faring significantly better than us economically. I've shared with you down here, ADOS is 200 liquid since 2014 studies, Color of Wealth, to 60,000 liquid for the African immigrants. I shared with you on a prior show that African immigrants were 50% of the graduating class of medicine, graduates from School of Medicine on Howard's campus. 50%. I don't even know how many ADOS doctors were in that graduating class. I don't know who the others are comprised of. So when Kamala talks about erasing HBCU student loan debt, she's not talking about the ADOS. But this is why we're unflattening Blackness, demanding our own distinction as American descendants of chattel slavery down here. So that when those reparations come from the state, the dollar will be right and the agenda will be right. So we're fighting for our own ethnicity. We're fighting to get our own people on the commission to study the reparations so it will turn out right for ADOS. That is what we're intending to do for the next 2 years. If we are successful, it doesn't matter whether we're successful or not. We're going to be, it's the same fight nationwide as it is for the state of California. Oh, Trey X ADOS says, oh my God, it jumped too far and too fast. Trey X, Angela, I have a gut feeling that it's going to end up a Bush v. Gore situation. It's going to take the federal courts to decide the election. You're probably right. I think we're going to go all the way down to the wire on this, Trey X. And you know, Trump is not going away easily. He's going to put up a fight. Taj Marie says the female police officer wasn't even wearing a face mask, further endangering the child's life, putting the child's life at risk. She didn't care. She did not care. They don't give a rip. Why do I like Trump? I'm not voting for Trump. I've never liked the Republicans. I used to vote Democrats until 8 years of nothing from Obama. And then a last election cycle, after trying to help Bernie Sanders win, which I didn't try this time around because it's clear you can't really start a revolution within a non-revolutionary party. I voted Green, Jill Stein at the top of the ticket, and Ajamu Baraka. And this time I voted for Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker. They have reparations on their platform, and Angela Walker, who was a guest of my show, you can look through the archive. She's running for vice president. She's ADOS, single mom, truck driver. She is willing to sit down with the ADOS to get more teeth in their reparations platform. So I feel like that's a place for the ADOS movement, for the ADOS lineage, to start looking and vetting them as a third party, especially since they're willing to sit down and talk with us about reparations. Hi, Jack Downs. Welcome to the live. Terry Lewis, thank you for joining the live. Thank you, Jack. Hotep Money, thank you for joining the live. Reparations needs to be framed as an emergency. It is, Hotep Money, a national state of emergency. Thank you for that. I'm going to bring that to the movement. It's the national state of emergency. As I mentioned prior, white folks share over 100 trillion household dollars. To the ADOS, less than 700 billion since COVID. But Biden wants to admonish the looters in Philly amidst the Walter Wallace protest while giving $5 trillion to the top 1% in the form of a bailout and bailing out the stock market. And we're supposed to run and vote for that. Those are the looters. You talk about the welfare kings and queens. There's no greater welfare king or queen than white corporatists. They like to capitalize their profits and socialize their losses at the expense of the people. Reese Anderson, thank you so much for joining the live. Why do you keep saying Kamala Harris ain't black? You know her father is Jamaican. Her father is Indian Jamaican. He proudly descends from slave owners. Look it up. Do your research, lady. Of Kamala Harris' father is Jamaican, then common sense will tell you she's black. Nobody said she wasn't black. She's not ADOS. And my role on this show and in the movement is to make America and the world see the ADOS. The world woke up with George Floyd, 846 to the neck. So they're starting to see that all that glitters is not gold over here for the ADOS, who is hidden within the confines of a handful of us that are doing okay. All it takes is 125,000 or greater to be in the top 10%. So that's no real money when the median income for whites is like 250,000. Okay? So my whole thing is we have got to unflatten blackness so that people like Kamala can't pull that off. Yes, she's black. Immigrants are black, but they're not ADOS. And we need that distinction because of the blacks in this country, 90% of us, I think it's more like 86%, 14% black immigrant, are ADOS. And we can't be seen because of the Oprahs and the LeBrons and the Jordans. Yes, they're ADOS, but they're in the top 10%, sharing the 2.3 trillion. They're not down here with the 90% of ADOS and some immigrants. They overlap. Now, these stats are, from some years ago. I don't know what it is current day. We don't have that data. I'll be glad when we do. But yeah, I'm sure since COVID, those numbers are even more abominable. The divide is even more abominable. Under Obama's 2 terms, he produced 1 million white millionaires while ADOS lost 43% of our wealth. So yes, I out Kamala because while she's black, she's not ADOS. That distinction needs to be made at every turn because we are the ones that are owed the reparations in the trillions over multi-generations. Not Kamala's people. Kamala's white because the color of white in this country is green. She descends from a Brahmin East Indian caste mother. Okay, that's white in India. We would be the Dalits, the untouchables, as Martin Luther King disclosed after his visit over to India. And her father is Indian Jamaican. Jamaican has as much diversity over there as we do here. So please stop this nonsense allowing us to be flattened under the very privileged Kamala Harris, who grew up in Canada, while she sits up here and talks about how she's a black girl raised in the U.S. Give me a break. She didn't come over here until she was in high school. Born here, went to Canada, reared in Canada, and then came back and went to Howard and learned how to ski-wee. And now within one generation, she is a stone's throw from the presidential seat. Okay? We've been over here 8 to 10 generations or more, and she and one can be within a stone's throw of becoming president in this country, and y'all want to sit up here and think that's possible with these white folks? You think these white women are going to allow her? They wouldn't even vote for Hillary, but they're going to allow Kamala within one generation as a black woman to be within a stone's throw of the presidency, with Biden having issues with dementia. Ooh, y'all gonna be surprised come election day. Y'all gonna be surprised at how these white women are not going to do that. That's not the pecking order. We shall see, because this is why they needed someone as extreme as a Kamala and a Biden. That's the only way they're going to win, is if folks are into white supremacy more than they are the color of her skin. Because she is definitely a black white supremacist. Just check her record out here in California. I ain't got time for that show right now. Maybe on Tuesday or Thursday. Tuesday, we'll see, because I got to be on Spectrum News 1 for the elections. Reese Anderson, you must be Caribbean. Do you respect the fact that my people are your reparations? That the ADOS, who were enslaved here under chattel slavery, the most heinous of its kind in the born free world, is your reparations? Were your people here to endure chattel slavery, to endure the rapes, to endure the breeding farms, to endure the beatings, to endure the lynchings, to endure the water holes, to endure the dogs, to endure the prisons, to endure convict leasing, to endure redlining? Current day, are they enduring government sanctioned execution? No. In Boston, ADOS is $700 total assets to Caribbean immigrants, $12,000 total assets. So you can tell me to shut up all you want. You don't have to be over here. You don't have to be over here, boo-boo. Go somewhere where they're catering to you. That's not the show. Caribbean is not my monkey or my circus. You should be kissing the feet of the ADOS. You should be thanking the ADOS. We are your reparations. You fled your circumstance to come here. We have nowhere to go. This is us. We built it, all of it. We are the legs of that table you and your people eat from. Absolutely nobody. Thank you for joining the live. So you and your ancestors can go to hell until you learn to respect Caribbean people and our plight. You get no respect. Yeah, okay. Hey, no war, just agitators. What's up, JoJo? Thank you for joining the live. All the black people enslaved in the Caribbean, you're going to have to answer to them when you die, since you like to run your ignorant. Oh, Lord, have mercy. Okay. Yeah. What photo, what incident was this? Joelle, I was talking, you have to go back to the top of the show, honey. I was talking about the incident in Rickia Young in Philadelphia. I was talking about Rickia, who the race soldiers pulled from her car, her SUV, at 2 a.m. in the morning, broke the glass of her SUV, dragged her and her nephew from the car, beat them and detained them, and then took her son and had a photo op with the son, a white woman, a white race soldier, actually was embracing the son, her son, in a photo as if he had been abandoned in the streets at 2 in the morning. Just go to the top of the show. You'll find it. Christian McNichol, thank you. First time tuning into your book read. Emmanuel Yeshua will bring salvation. These devils choose pocket money over justice and peace. Oh, yes, Miss Christian McNichol. Thank you for joining the live. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There is a sowing and reaping. You know, and until they do right by ADOS, nothing good will come for them. Everything they've done to us will be turned on to them. Wait for it. Angel Dickerson. Hello, beloved. Thank you for joining the live. Absolutely nobody says disaggregating the data will definitely help us to be seen. Absolutely. Reese, you might need to start your own show. You have a lot to say. Das Nukesta. Thank you so much. At Reese, you can leave. Please leave. You know what? I have friends from all over the globe, darling. This is the problem I have with people like him who are anti-ADOS instead of kissing our feet and thanking us for the privilege of being in our country. Anytime you go hard in the paint for ADOS, it's a problem for people like this. It's a problem. They can identify with where they come from and be loud and proud about it. But the minute ADOS stands up for ADOS, it's problematic for people like him who should be kissing our very feet with gratitude, who should be in this fight for our reparations, instead of trying to find ways to make themselves more the big whoop in this country. Nobody has once disparaged the slavery you endured. I'm telling you that it's people like you with your attitude who come to this country who are as oppressive to us as our white oppressors in blackface. Many immigrants share your sentiment about the very ADOS who are your reparations. You're the one that ought to be ashamed of yourself coming into my show being disruptive in this way. I will continue to stay on my square and fight for the ADOS exclusively and make sure I unflatten blackness so my people and the oppression from all of you can be clearly seen in our fight for reparations and a black agenda. Yes, he's in his feelings, Toothy. There was nothing inaccurate said. You are in your feelings because it has some place to land. Let the hit dogs holler. Absolutely nobody. This guy stepped in politics 202 without getting the basics. He's making points we've addressed 3 years ago. Nobody's paying him any mind. I'm strolling on. Okay, family. With that said, let me pray us out so I can be done with this Reese Anderson. I want to thank you so much for joining the live. I want to thank you for rolling with your sister always. Please share this video. Join us in our protest vote. Stand on your square for reparations for the ADOS family. Stand on your square for the Black agenda. In exchange for your vote, if you haven't voted, consider joining us in the protest. And with that said, family, we're at an hour and a half. I will keep you apprised of whether or not I will be back on Tuesday and give you information on where you can tune in to Spectrum News 1 to see me post-elections to talk about what actually happened. Until then, family, know this, that the light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever ADOS and its allies are, God truly is, because guess what, family? You are the face of God. You are the voice of God. You are the body temple of the Spirit of the living God. Until Tuesday, family, you go out here in these streets and act like you know who you are, and you make it a beautiful, God-inspired rest of your evening and next couple of days until we meet again. I love you, Black family. I love you strong. Ciao for now, family. Peace.